8 years old, 30 minutes, one red coat. On October 12, 1950, a pickup truck idled near the town dump in Bennington, Vermont, its engine ticking as it cooled in the autumn air. Inside sat Paul Jepson, an 8-year-old boy in a bright red coat, waiting while his mother worked the family farm chores nearby. She had driven him there herself, about 15 minutes from the farmhouse, to tend the pigs kept at the dump. She left him in the truck, within sight, within call. 30 minutes, she thought. Just long enough. When she came back, the truck was empty. The door was closed. No sign of a struggle, no footprint in the dust, no sound carried on the wind. The red coat, the one detail that should have made him visible across the whole bleak landscape, was gone with him. 2 truck drivers later reported seeing the boy in the truck around 3 in the afternoon, which meant he had been there, present, accounted for, after his mother had walked away. Then, nothing. No witness saw him climb down. No one heard a door open. The last confirmed sighting of Paul Jepson is a child in a red coat, sitting alone in a pickup at a dump, waiting. That is the entire window of the disappearance. 30 minutes between a mother turning her back and a mother finding an empty seat. In search and rescue work, the difference between a recovered child and a cold case is often measured in exactly this kind of gap, the minutes that tick past before anyone notices the silence. The Bennington Triangle has swallowed hunters, hikers, and college students over the years, but this case is different. This is a child who vanished while his mother was within earshot. Before this file closes, you will see why that 30-minute gap still haunts Vermont, and why the same mistake is still being made in cases you have never heard of. The human mind resists an empty space. Give it a missing child, and it will fill the void with monsters, with legends, with the whisper of a cursed mountain that collects the lost. That 30-minute gap still feels like an open wound in the timeline. A child there, then not there. If you want to stay on this case as we unpack the full file, you will see why that gap is not just a detail, it is the key. In the comments, write "The file stays open." If you have ever encountered a case where such a small window changed everything, that is what happened here. The Bennington Triangle became a story, a place where 5 people disappeared in 5 years, and the forest seemed to fold them away. But the story, as it is usually told, is missing a page. Paul Jepson did not vanish from the family farm, as some retellings claim. The records place him at the town dump, where his mother was working with the pigs, and that difference matters more than it seems. He was not an infant slipped from a cradle. He was 8 years old enough to open a truck door, old enough to wander, old enough to be curious about the woods that pressed against the dump on every side. So the investigation began the way investigations always begin, with a grid and a hope. Vermont State Police arrived, volunteers gathered, and bloodhounds were brought in to catch a scent the cold ground might still hold. The dogs picked up Paul's trail quickly, which gave the searchers their first real thread. The handlers followed the scent away from the dump, down an adjacent road, moving with the kind of certainty that makes a search party breathe again. Then the trail ended. Abruptly, at a crossroads. Here is what nobody noticed at the time. The bloodhounds did not fail. They succeeded. And then the trail reached an intersection where the ground could no longer tell them which way the boy had gone. In the folklore that grew around this case, that crossroads became proof of something sinister, a sign that the mountain itself had taken him. But the science of tracking tells a quieter story. Bloodhound work is fragile, limited by terrain, by weather, by the age of the scent and the contamination of the ground. Rain had fallen. The trail was already hours old. A crossroads is not where a child vanishes into thin air. It is where the evidence simply runs out of certainty, which leaves the question that has followed this file for over 70 years. Did Paul Jepson walk into those woods on his own, drawn by the mountains he had talked about for days? Or did he climb into a vehicle at that crossroads, lifted away by a stranger in the time it takes a mother to finish feeding pigs? Search theory research shows that the last known position and the first witness statements shape everything that follows, and they are often the least reliable pieces of the puzzle. The last known position is a truck seat. The witnesses are a mother and 2 truck drivers. Everything else is inference. Peer-reviewed work on child abduction risk adds a hard, uncomfortable detail. A brief lapse in supervision is enough, especially in an environment with vehicle access or road networks nearby. The dump sat within reach of a road. That is the unglamorous mechanism underneath the legend, the thing that makes the Bennington Triangle less a mystery than a pattern of infrastructure and timing. Think about the weight of that. A child can disappear within view of a road. That is not a curse. That is a system of opportunities lining up for exactly 30 minutes, then closing again. So much of this case turns on that single, brutal insight. A system of opportunities lining up for 30 minutes, then closing. If you want to stay on this case as we open the next file, the door is open. In the comments, write "The file stays open" if you think Paul Jepson walked into those woods on his own, or tell me why the crossroads still bothers you. Every theory keeps the file active. Stay on this case. The search that followed was massive, a coordinated response that threw everything available at those Vermont woods. Aircraft swept the tree lines. Volunteers combed the underbrush, and the case file records the agonizing outcome in 4 words. There was no trace found. No red coat snagged on a branch. No footprint in the mud. No body in the undergrowth. The most visible child in the county, dressed in a coat designed to be seen, simply stopped, leaving evidence. Days passed, then weeks. No ransom note arrived. No credible sighting surfaced. No one came forward with information. The initial witness statements, the ones that should have anchored the investigation, turned out to be as fragile as the scent trail. The truck driver's timeline placed Paul in the truck at 3 in the afternoon, but that detail never resolved into a lead. It just sat in the file, unconnected, unexplained. Pause here, because what came next was not part of the plan the searchers had laid out. The case was never solved, not because no one tried, but because the record itself offers no suspect, no vehicle, no witness who could close the gap. The disappearance remains unresolved in every account, a fact that matters when the legend grows louder than the file. There was no confirmed abduction, no charged suspect, no confession. Just a child in a red coat, a crossroads, and the silence after the search parties went home. That silence is worth examining because it is not unique to 1950. The same errors, the same assumptions, the same fragile witness timelines still decide outcomes today. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children reported 29,568 missing child cases in 2023. Many of those were resolved quickly, most cleared within 24 hours, because modern systems move fast and coordination has improved. But the FBI's National Crime Information Center entered 337,195 missing person records that same year, and at year's end, 92,252 of those records were still active. The National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, known as NAMUS, lists more than 22,000 active cases in its database. The scale is staggering, and almost none of it makes the news. Here is the part most people miss. Every one of those active files began the same way Paul Jepson's did, with a last known position, a witness statement, a gap in supervision. The databases are newer, the technology is better, but the architecture of a disappearance has not changed. A person is here, then they are not. The investigation lives or dies on what happened in between. Somewhere in that gap, the case against the legend builds. Paul Jepson is often counted among the 5 deaths of the Bennington Triangle, grouped with hikers and hunters who vanished near Glastonbury Mountain. But the record does not support that framing. He is described as a missing child, and his body was never found, which makes him a disappearance, not a death. No one can say with certainty what happened to him, and that absence of an answer is itself evidence of how the mystery was built. The legend needs a body count to feel inevitable. The file only has a gap. The red coat was never recovered. That sentence carries more weight than it should. A coat that bright in a landscape of October brown and green should have turned up somewhere. snagged on a fence, draped over a branch, folded in a ditch. It did not. The truck was found, the mother was found, the witnesses were found, the coat was not. It is the one object that could have answered everything, and it is gone, which means the story cannot be closed the way cold cases are supposed to close. That red coat is still out there, the one detail that could have pulled this case out of legend and into a courtroom. If you want to stay on this case, I'll be following the file wherever it leads next. In the comments, write "the file stays open" and tell me what detail you still think about hours after watching. At the crossroads where the Bloodhounds lost the trail, the road bends past the dump and continues on toward the mountains. There's nothing remarkable about it. No marker, no memorial, no sign that a child's scent once ended there. The trail did not simply vanish the way the legend insists. It reached a point where the evidence could not follow, and the investigation made a choice about what that meant. The case file records that choice as an ending. It was not. If you have ever walked past a missing person poster and read the date, the age, the last known location, you know the quiet weight that sits inside those three details. The reason the poster exists is usually hidden in the gap between them. The minutes that were not watched, the witness who was not asked the right question, the trail that was followed too late. Paul Jepson's poster would have read the same way. October 12, 1950, 8 years old. Bennington Town Dump. The gap is 30 minutes wide, and it has never been closed. The Bennington Triangle is less a place than a name we give to repeated disappearances we could not explain, a way to make the forest seem hungry instead of indifferent. That is hard news for the people who love a good mystery. The supernatural explanation is tidier, more satisfying, easier to hold. But the documented facts point somewhere else entirely. 5 disappearances in 5 years, clustered near Glastonbury Mountain, are not proof of a curse. They are proof of a pattern, and patterns have causes. Roads, timing, witness gaps, lost scent trails. The word for it is not legend. The word for it is vulnerability, and it is still there, waiting in every case where a person slips out of sight. The truck is not in any photograph of that dump. The red coat has never surfaced. The crossroads is still there, and the file is still open. Paul Jepson's mother died without knowing what happened to her son, carrying the weight of 30 minutes for the rest of her life. His father went to the grave with the same question. The case has no active leads, no confession, no body, no answer. The file is still open. The question is not only what took Paul Jepson, it is whether we are any closer to finding the next one.